a couple of years ago, I went back to, I went to Minneapolis, I love concerts. And so I went to the concert and we went to see the Rolling Stones. It was huge, the Viking Stadium was packed. And so I was sitting there, and here all of a sudden somebody said, and now, here, we're going to introduce the Rolling Stones, and it was Donavin. And Minneapolis was a sold-out concert for the Stones. Donavin was introduced. So that's how he gets around. That's how everybody knows him. And then, so tonight we're gonna take a break when the food gets here, and then we're gonna eat. And so then he'll start, and then we'll take a break when the food comes. And then at the end, he'll do a book signing. Make sure you register because we're having a drawing for books, and then Donavin will sign the book for you, because that's the books that we do. And then he also has books for sale.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm real pleased to be here at Racing Magpie, and wanted to help share some information about the Greasy Grass, you know, our Victory Day, and it'll be June 25th, but a lot of people are celebrating or whatever the whole month, I think, because you can't do everything in one day around the 25th and 26th. So my very first presentation on this was in April, actually, at Deadwood, 150th of the Greasy Grass, and so there's been several of them around. You see, on Wednesday, I'm going over to the Rosebud site, and so it's also the 150th anniversary of the Battle of the Rosebud, which is preceded the Little Bighorn by a few days. So a lot of the people who were there at that first battle, at the Rosebud, were then later at the Greasy Grass. And it's also the 160th of the Fetterman fight, which a lot of people have forgot about that. And that was the biggest battle in history until Little Bighorn overshadowed it 10 years later. So that happened on December 21st, 1866. So I want to start by giving you a little overview of some things that were happening and going on within my own family with all these events. And my Lakota name is Chinkahu Wakante. I'm high backbone from the Hump family, and it was General Miles, once the surrenders were made, that he asked what that word meant, and translators, I guess, said it was Buffalo Hump. And so from there, it evolved to a last name of the Humps, and by the time of the surrenders, then that was a last name, and then there were first names. So my great-great-grandfather Hump, you know, as many of you may know, they wanted Bible names. The agent encouraged Bible names, you know, John, Paul, and his was pretty Bible. It became Moses. He became Moses. So Moses Hump, but nobody knew him of his own people by that. They all called him Chief Hump. So then there's the father of Hump also, which is another Hump. So it's a headman family name that comes down like that. So his father, Hump, and Crazy Horse's mother were biologic brother and sister. So that's why Hump is in all the books on Crazy Horse, and they're referring to the first Hump 1, I call that. So I have a book that's coming out this year that I worked on for over 20 years, and it's been done for 7 years, and it would explain all of that history. And it starts in 1680 with the use of winter counts. Our important event of the year was drawn on a height and kept like that. And then this book ends about 1920, and it's called High Backbone, Hump, and Crazy Horse, a Lakota-Cheyenne History from a Family View. So all of our men, of our head men, married Cheyenne women. So I'm one half Cheyenne. as well on the mother's side. And so I want to share some of that. I was thinking about these rides too. I've been involved with some of the, at least tagging along and catching up with some of the riders and that. And one group of ours came from Green Grass and like from Pine Ridge, and I noticed there's a lot of history just in the last 20, 30 years. And it's kind of like, okay, we have a ride and we start from the agencies like they did in the old days, and we come to the Little Bighorn eventually, you know. 20 days for our green grass group there, 20 days, you know, and then about 20 miles a day, 400 miles, you know, you can do it. But really with our own family, we had already made a homeland, which, you know, sometimes too there was so much movement, you know, as everybody knows, following game and buffalo and that, but we had really made a home for a few decades right there in that territory. So there was no journey for us from the agency. What they're representing there, a lot of people from the agency, when the Little Bighorn happened, they had already surrendered to the agencies. And now they went back, they're gonna go back and fight, and they're not supposed to do that. The agent didn't like that, you know, but anyway, they're gone. But for us, our main homeland, our kind of beat was from on the Tongue River, was Miles City, Montana, down to about Dayton, Wyoming. So all along there is, and that's a pretty long range, and you go further in by Dayton, just up in to the Bighorns, and the Medicine Wheel is right over there. On the other end is where some of the surrenders were at Miles City, is the other hub up there. That was the Tongue River Cantonment, and that was General Miles was up there. And then the other thing that kept us out in the Powder River country, even separated from our other groups, say around, say current Standing Rock and current Cheyenne River, current Pine Ridge, and all that was the war on the Bozeman Trail. So there's all these wars to be fought. So our men were headmen. You know, everybody was spiritual, and there was a lot of ceremony preceding a lot of things. But we didn't have that person, say like a black elk or something. We really represented those fighters and warriors who were really right in the trenches, that somebody had to stand up and stop this onslaught and of soldiers and people that were coming in on our families. And so otherwise we might have ended up like I worked with Choctaws down in Oklahoma, you know, might have ended up on the Trail of Tears. Of many tribes experienced that forced march, you know. Nobody was marching us anywhere. We were, if anything, we were marching the soldiers in the end. You know, so that's a little bit of a introduction on that. And also with the treaties too, like 1868, Hump from our family, Hump and Crazy Horse never signed a treaty. So my grandfather Hump had 13 more years of freedom by not signing the Fort Laramie Treaty. And he just went back to the old ways of what he was doing in the Tongue River, Powder River country. His band that he was with was remnants of his father's band, and it fluctuated, but it was around 1,000 people in his band. So when he surrendered in 1881, it really wasn't a surrender. We have to be careful with those words, because there was no escort into the agencies. This was 1881, and they decided to come in and talk about a deal, just like with Crazy Horse. He'd come in to talk about a deal for a possible agency in the Powder River country, which if that ever would have happened, it might have been centered around about where Gillette, Wyoming is, in that area. But then we find there was no plan to follow through on that. You know, it was just to get them to come in. So really, there weren't surrenders there, but there is a Sitting Bull surrender census. It's a really good genealogy tool too by Ephraim Dixon, and it's all the people who surrendered from Canada. So that's another whole area that we have to include for our Ocheti Shakaway, the Lakota at Wood Mountain and Saskatchewan. So with my book, I travel to all those areas to see those areas and talk to those people. And then we have lots of Dakota right across the North Dakota line into Manitoba, those reserves, they call them up there. And so with that surrender census, that when they came in, my grandfather's band in was 714. Every man, woman, and child in the band is listed. Their ages, their Lakota name, so you can imagine, you know, the value of a genealogy tool like that. And his band was by far the largest of any in the book. I think Sitting Bull's band was down to way under 100 by then, because a lot of people had already came in. There were people like Rain in the Face up there, and Gall, and a lot of people from Pine Ridge, actually. I'll get this activated here. They disappeared. I know one of the people that was with our family a lot was Knife Chief family, and Knife Chief was a headman, and after they killed Crazy Horse, he was so fed up, he had been also appointed a Indian police, and he disappeared. Nobody knew where he was, and he was in Canada. He went up there, and so in this surrender census, oh, here he is. He's back with his band for the first time, and where a lot of those people left, and I have that covered in my book. But that was immediately after the killing of Crazy Horse on September 5th, 1877 at Camp Robinson. And as they're moving out at the same time as like the burial party is leaving with him, there are hundreds and hundreds and probably up to 1,000 people where a lot of that history is not recorded. They're moving the Red Cloud Agency to the Missouri River. It had 4 locations. So the first one was on the Nebraska-Wyoming border, and the second one is where fires are terrible down there too. I was just recently at Crawford, but the second location was there by Crawford at became Fort Robinson then the next year. The third location was Missouri River, and they didn't like that, but they tried it over there. A few went, and then the fourth time it moved, it becomes Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. So, but at that time, the missing history and link there is that a lot of those people just took off and went north, and they reported in at places like Cheyenne River Agency. Some people put them up and hid them, and Standing Rock, and even Fort Peck. And they all went to up in that Wood Mountain, Saskatchewan area. So, and another thing I'd like to do too is to also have any of you share any information you like with some discussion, because I already talked to some of you about your families, including one of our relatives too, Dewey Beard. We were talking about Dewey Beard a little bit. So this event that's coming up here on Wednesday, this is the 150th of what the Cheyenne named the battle where sister saved her brother, because there'll be some reenactments of this, but out on this area right here, a man looked like he was going to face certain death on the battlefield, and over the hill came this woman in her finest regalia, and the soldiers were firing, and she rode down through the middle, thank you, and rescued him. And so it's thereafter known as the battle where sister saved her brother. This big horse came through here. It shows the soldiers are all firing here, and he's clamped on the side. He just planted himself right on the side of the horse. His face is right there, his nose and chin where that pointer is, and he just clung to the side of that horse. And this is his arm reaching over with this rifle he's holding. And away they went. They said they went over this hill over here and to safety. A lot of warriors were there, and I heard there were a lot of high five going on. They made it safely. And this area here is an old buffalo jump here. All of this here is a lot of eagles around there. This is kind of a prehistoric buffalo jump where food was put up. And so days before that, the battle where sister saved her brother, this base is General Crook. He's based right there. I teach at Sheridan College last 5 years, so they wanted to keep me over there, so they gave me a house and a meal ticket too, so I didn't miss any meals, you know. And, so I got a place over there, but it's great to go 20 minutes and you're into these major history battle sites and areas. This is right over by the Britain Museum. I was just at a 150th roundtable talk there just days ago with some of the Cheyenne and Crow and Arapaho, and so back in this area is where Crook will end up. So they'll go into the Rosebud, which is up by Decker, Montana, and with about 1,000 men, they'll have a long day's fight over there, and they pretty much get whipped. They're running low on ammunition. They decide to go back to, this is Camp Cloud Peak, named for the highest peak up here, Cloud Peak, and that was Crook's base. There was a big arms build-up there. They had been bringing in all these arms from Fort Laramie as a big build-up for the war. And so anyway, they waited for a while too for some of the Shoshone scouts. I got a Harper's Weekly, and it shows the Shoshone arriving right over one of these mountains of the Bighorns. This is actually Bighorn, Wyoming, and Sheridan, Wyoming is over here. And they're coming in, so they added about 300 to his numbers, would have been about 1,300. So they went back. They were supposed to meet Custer and all of them in a 3-pronged attack at the Little Bighorn days later. So that didn't happen because Crook went back. And so they say, well, maybe we would have won if Crook would have came up there with 1,300 more people, you know, and we usually just say it would have taken a few more minutes, but we still cleaned house. Let's see. But anyway, they keep a diary too, and they're back over here fishing actually when Custer's getting killed on the 25th. And they're keeping a diary, and my gosh, these fish are awesome. We're having such a great time here, and you know, celebrating, and whoops. Peter, he went down that day. Frank Berard was one of the big scouts of that bunch too. So this is the pronged attack here. Custer's going to come out from Fort Abraham Lincoln here, and here's the Greasy Grass. Then we got Gibbons Collier going to come here from Fort Ellis at Bozeman area. This is over, if you've been to Fort Abraham Lincoln, it's just south of Mandan in Bismarck. And then this is Crooks that never made it, see right here. So you just have these groups here. And this might be a good time when something I haven't used or brought. I went over to the Timber Lake, an area museum, And when the soldiers of Custer went back to Abraham Lincoln in caskets and that, the women, their widows, all went back to Monroe, Michigan, his adopted hometown. And that's where there's a lot of sorrow, you know. So when you look at the Greasy Grass, it can be a big victory celebration for us, a lot of people, but for some who lost people on the other side, it's a reflection, you know. It's a different feeling. But anyway, this was quite a few years ago. They have 150th anniversary of it's called Custer Week in Monroe, and they celebrate his life all week long, you know, and keep building him up, and so one year they wanted me to be the keynote speaker and talk about the Lakota side. So I was wondering what was going to happen to me over there, but they were very nice people. I met the descendants of the Custer family. They had the last name Custer. Right across from my venue it was an old movie theater downtown, and that's where the program was. Right across the street was a boot shop that was in the Custers, but then they had a farm out on the edge of town, and the last day they brought this in. It's a bow from out here, and they didn't know whose it was, but it's Lakota, and the widows brought this back, and they said, this belongs with you out there. It doesn't belong in Monroe. So they said, well, maybe you could share it with some people, you know. So at Standing Rock and Cheyenne River, there's a museum that straddles kind of the border there at Timber Lake. It's a pretty nice museum, really nice museum. And so I have it on display over there. So if anybody would want to look at that, I borrow it since it's on loan, and I thought since the 150th, I'll bring it out here. And they're sinew back. They tediously melt animal fat. I'm a bow maker also. The animal fat to strengthen that, and then this is where the arrows were fired, a notch piece that wore out there, and it was to strengthen the bows. But the bows that Hump used in our family were Osage orange. They traded in the South for those, so that's what I use is Osage orange. But anyway, I thought that'd be a good time to mention that. This is a picture here. We went to school with Colleen Cutshaw too. She won the contest for this design that's at the Indian Memorial at the Little Bighorn. And then these are up at the museum, prominent people. These are all from our family, these people, except there's a Arapaho here and some Crow. But this is Rain in the Face, and PZ, Gall, and Sitting Bull, and Hump. And they have a drawing for Crazy Horse because there's no proven picture. So I like that drawing, and this is Lodok. So also at this time I'll show this picture here. This just had color added to it, but this is my great-great-grandfather Hump here, who was 26 years old in the battle. And as I mentioned, they married Cheyenne. These two are both Cheyenne wives of his. This is an 1879 picture taken 3 years after the battle. And Huffman up there in Miles City, he had a big studio. If you ever get up into Wyoming, Montana, he's a famous photographer, L.A. Huffman, Leighton and Huffman. So he's got a hat that says Hump there, and this war club he used in the battle at Little Bighorn and was also buried with him. And these two are sisters, and I come from White Calf. This is my great-great-grandmother here. And in the end, they had to give up their other wives. He had 4, and he kept her because he had been with her the longest and had the most kids. That's usually the way it went. But they still seen each other, and as long as they weren't just under the same roof when the agent come out to do census, then they were okay. They were pretty remote area anyway. And these ladies are from the family of Morning Star of Donavin. So anyway, L.A. Huffman. It's kind of amazing the photographs they can add color to. And this here is a picture. This is right there where the library is in Sheridan today. And this is the encampment of Crook here, just showing all the build-up and a military presence in the Shoshone would come right off of this from the west in to join them. Other pictures I have in here. We're going to be taking some tours with, I'm up at in Montana all this week, and there's a Little Bighorn Associates. They're a big the second largest organization. There's two of them, and they have a quarterly newsletter and stuff. Anyway, I'm speaking for them, and they're taking bus tours right into the Rosebud. And over here is the Crow's Nest. It was a journey from the battle where Sister saved her brother into the Reno site. And then these areas here, I don't know if everybody knows, but Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe owns 200 acres now on the battlefield, which is a first. So on the south end, on Reno Creek, there's going to be a lot of camping and teepees up there. I know my brother, he's setting up 15 teepees over there from the tribe. And these are back in the day pictures, some of the first pictures that were taken. This one here I put in because it shows right there where the real bird reenactment is, right over here. Of course, they wasn't doing it back then. But this H.R. Locke, he was actually from Deadwood, and he took some of the early photos up there. He had a shop up in Deadwood, and I asked the crowd at Deadwood, I said, anybody heard of H.R. Locke? And nobody heard of him. And then I said, has anybody heard of Private Windolph, Charles Windolph? And nobody knew that name either, but Windolph was a survivor of the Reno fight. And there were only six people that got medals of honor on the soldier side, and he was one of them. But he worked for Homestake Mine for about, I think it was like 19 years or something like that. And then he lived to 94, 95 in Lead. So up into the 1950s, you had somebody, on the non-Indian side, as well as people like Dewey Beard, who were living, into the 1950s. And so he had a book too. It was called I Fought with Custer, although he fought with Reno, really. Custer didn't make it. And another book from up there too on the Cheyenne side was Wooden Lake. He gave a lot of accounts. These are some of the first early photos also that were taken up there. And I know even today a lot of people drive into this first part, and tourists and say, oh my God, a lot of people died up here. And the ones you see as you come in, most of them were not in the battle. So after the Fetterman fight in 1866, they brought the soldiers killed there up to Little Bighorn and placed them here. I think there are some people like, Benteen or Reno might be here too. One or both had their remains brought back. But for a landmark, this is the last stand hill right here. And all this is under construction. The visitor center is not going to be open for the 150th, and I think they could have made some changes to speed that process up, or should have. I went by there 2 days ago. You know, it's close, but it's not going to be ready. These are 2 people that were killed during the initial attack with Reno, and so this is a relief here. I'll put this over on the table, and it's an actual replica of the layout. So we'll put that kind of like to the north here, and the last stand hill up here. So they're actually the right size too. And the highest point on the entire field is right here. That's Weir Point. So the Little Bighorn River comes through here, and then the Indian encampment's all through here. And Reno will make his attack in here on the Hunkpapa, and then he'll be overwhelmed. That'll only last about 20 minutes, and they're overrun. They have to climb this hill up here, and they dig in up here for the rest of the battle. Meanwhile, Custer is going on up into this area here. And our family camps were right up in here. My big chapter on the Little Bighorn, the Greasy Grass, is called the Music of the Bugles. And so anyway, the women were over here picking Teamstella, and that's a story that a lot of families had. Some said they were learning how to pick Teamstella turnips, and the attack came, and some of them they screamed when they heard the bugles, because that was the first indication that soldiers were in the area, and they ran screaming into this is a real accessible area here. It's one of the names is Minikoju Ford here, back and forth. It's pretty easy to access compared to this is not. This is very steep incline. So on the very first initial attack, our family, our men got ready, and they went down here to the south till they heard about the Reno attack, and that was already over in 20 minutes. It was like they were all pointing to the north, you know, a bigger fight, you know, when they happened up there, and then they went on up here. Some of the fiercest fighting in our family was at Calhoun Hill, and Calhoun Hill turned the tide when people like Crazy Horse and Hump and them split the soldiers in half. And when they split them, they went down through the middle and back through. After that, soldiers were dismounted. Many had lost the horses because their horses were real prized. You know, sometimes that's more important to get those horses, you know, and all that. But towards the end, they were just kind of running this way towards this last stand hill. And Walter Camp interviewed my grandfather, Hump, in the early 1900s. So he told some of this, what I'm talking about. And they described it as a buffalo hunt. They said, well, it's kind of like the way we hunted buffalo. These that were running, we separate them from the bigger group and get them into smaller groups like that. They were working like that. So as they were going up Calhoun Hill, they went up and made a split there, came back, and my grandfather received a shot in his knee. The soldier was, a lot of them were down shooting like this here on the ridge, and the bullet went right into his knee and traveled up his leg and exited out his hip, and his horse jumped in the air and fell over on him. And so he lay like that. And even several of the Crazy Horse people, other family members, agreed that Crazy Horse was one of those that made a corridor around him until they brought another horse in. And he was pretty sore, but he you know, recovered after that. And then at the Renton, I was right next to one of my relatives on the Cheyenne side, I told him this a little bit one time, but I didn't want to just say it out of nowhere, because I was thinking that, but his name is Linwood Talbot, a friend of mine, historian, and Hump's brother, Little Crow, accidentally killed their grandfather, Lame White Man. It's a famous chief in friendly warfare, and their story is pretty much he had a soldier uniform on, and he'd been in the sweat lodge, and he came out, his hair was all loose, and Little Crow mistook him for a Rickarraw scout and took him out. And so I read a lot of books where, I like that book Lakota Noon by Greg Mitchell, and breaks it down, but he spent a lot of pages on Lame White Man trying to figure out, was Lame White Man down with these soldiers fighting them? Does one of them kill him? Or was he with these soldiers and one of them killed? He's trying to narrow it down, hey, he just wasted a lot of pages. Little Crow killed him, it wasn't the soldiers. So I don't know if there's any announcements here. It sounds like there's some, we mentioned we might be taking a little food break and then continuing here. This is the area where Reno had to leave after the 20 minutes to come up on this end. Here's the Reno Hill right here. And so down in the bottom, every fourth man held the horses, and the soldiers would squat down and fire, like Civil War days, and that didn't work out here at all. And so pretty soon they're stampeding the horses, and the horses are stampeding right into the Papa end of the village. And so with that, the horses had the ammo, the packs had all the ammo. So there goes the horse, and the bullets too. So they'll camp out here for a whole day right there basically, and then this continues on up here. This is a picture of the last stand, and this is a shot here from that Calhoun Hill right here. That's where most of these markers are today of the soldiers, although they're not in exact places. But like I said, after that it was pretty much over in a lot of ways. Through archaeology, there's a lot of new things since 1983 that were added from archaeology. Some of the elders used to say, yeah, they fought down by the visitor center and that big cemetery, and some of them said, oh, don't listen to that. They're all mixed up. They're getting old. And then archaeology proved them right. But they found shell casings, and they even matched up bullets from that particular shell, where it came from. And those elders, they knew what they were talking about. They were down there. They had went down towards the visitor center, and then they made a last stand kind of thing back up to the hill. And then there were some of them that escaped from there, took off down into this place called Deep Ravine, and there were just more younger warriors in there holding horses, so there was no place for them to go. At least, every family has their own view of this and different stories. So that's one thing I could always talk on different observations of people, because people like Kate Bighead here of the Cheyenne, she watched the whole battle and had recorded what she had seen and who went where, and so all of that was helpful. Some people had stories just of the Reno part, and this is Dull Knife here in Little Wolf, and of course Sitting Bull, who predicted the victory at the Deer Medicine Rocks, and then Custer comes into like where Busby, Montana is, and then south of Busby is that battle where sister saved her brother. But when that happened, they said, yeah, this is probably the big victory that Sitting Bull envisioned, and they said, no, there's a bigger one coming. And like in my book, I never heard anybody mention Greasy Grass in this manner. So I say they have the big ceremonies up there at Deer Medicine Rocks and other locations, but they did ceremony even daily. And this was the solstice, see? June 21st is our solstice coming up. That was really important for Sundance also. So 4 days, say, of ceremony there, June 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And this encampment is grazing down the grass so quick. And our people never come together except for events, ceremony like that. They were all slowly leaving. So there's your 4 days there, and Custer has arrived, and what he sees, he observes, is he says they're going to get away. The women have already rolled out the lodges, teepee, and they're leaving to the south. It looks like everybody's leaving, and that's when he does fast forward. Let's move in, make this attack. The horses should be pitied also, the soldier horses, because as they're coming across before they got to the Reno site, they're in that crow's nest, and they were supposed to come in later, but some of the soldiers lost at the Britain the other night. The Cheyenne guy called them crackers, but I don't know what they were. They were some hardtack, Anyway, they lost this off the wagon, and they went on, and they're making a little rest with all the wagons in that canyon, and they tell the officers, they say, well, yeah, we lost some food back there. They said, well, go back there and get that, because, there's enemy in the area. And when they went back, they topped this ridge, and they looked over, and here were, and they actually have names of the people too. There were these boys eating that, and they took off to the camp. So there was your element of surprise, and that's another fast forward a day early for Custer to come in. And those poor horses, they really went through a lot, travel, and sure. Did you want it, Peter? Did you have something to add there?
Is that a good break?
Yeah, you bet.
Speaking of crackers, we have some soup.
I was going to, if I could have your attention, I was going to go ahead and talk about some of these pictures here while you're eating there. So this picture, I had the privilege of interviewing family from this Cheyenne family. We had a lot of stories. Spotted Wolf and his son, White Elk, were very brave warriors, fought at the Rosebud fight, and after the Rosebud battle, Spotted Elk on the left was made a hitman chief. After Little Bighorn, him and his son both came away. These are online with some really fancy white handled, I think they're like pearl handled pistols, like 45 Colt pistols. And Yellow Nose captured a 7th Cavalry flag guided. And sometimes people will say from families that they got they'll say like as if there were one flag, but there were several of those guidance. There were a lot of them, and so different families did end up with those. And in fact, at the very end of the battle, on the last stand hill, some of the women there, including like Mary Crawler, who became known as Moving Robe Woman at Standing Rock, and this Kate Bighead, she said, I seen the soldiers were all laying there, and the men of our nation were circling the last stand hill, and she said she's seen Gall and Rain in the Face, and Hump, and Crazy Horse, and Crokin of the Hook Papa, who was carrying the flag. He had the 7th Cavalry flag. And they also counted coup on that. So, you know, sometimes at our powwows, you know, we see our the flag come in like that. That's what they're representing. So, Spotted Wolf, let's see, Bobtail Horse said White Elk accidentally shot himself in the leg at the Battle of the Rosebud. So he was not very active at Little Bighorn. The day after Little Bighorn, the Northern Cheyenne honored him, making him a war chief. Spotted Wolf was covered with blood as he was honored during his ceremony. He was still dusty, and one of his eyes were shot out in the battle, so that's why he's lost his eye here. He's got those glasses on. He was shot at point blank range, and their mother also was gifted with a bugle. So they have a bugle in their family and like nice collectibles. Especially in the global side is more native side, but with the non-Indian side, it's more linear, and people want numbers and how many bullets were fired. And I have a little booklet on that, and I usually don't take it with me very many places. But on June 22nd, Custer had 647 men, 12 companies of the 7th, 31 officers, including Tom Custer, 35, his brother, 35 Indian scouts who were Arikara, Crow, and even some Lakota were part of those scouts. 7 civilian scouts and interpreters, 6 civilian mule packers, and he got Boston Custer in. He was age 18. Let's see, a nephew, Audie Reed, was a guide and beef herder. So they got in on the expedition under those terms there. Custer had a C company, CEFI, and L Benteen BHK. So once I talked about Reno went in on the south end of the field, and then Custer sent Benteen further to the south end, and he was supposed to look for Indians down there in this southern part, and he never did find anything. So when he comes back, Reno is already dug in, and he's under fire and all that. A lot of the heat has went off of them to the north. So and also with Benteen, they didn't like Custer very well. They had their differences, and with Reno too, there was they heard shooting up here, a lot of firing, and they wondered what's going on with Custer. And this Captain Weir, who the highest point on here, Weir Point, he's concerned about that. He said, well, Reno, you're not going to do anything? Have us check on Custer? And he disobeyed orders and left this Reno camp. He went up to Weir Point, and he was overrun there. So it was no use, And he had to fight his way back to be protected with Reno. Meanwhile, when he actually left Reno and went down to assist some officer who was trying to get up the hill. But yeah, they were pretty much overrun down in that area. And then a lot of the women were heading off from our camps, were coming this way out towards, kind of like going towards the trading post and that by the highway. And men were coming back through this ford here to check on them constantly. And they didn't just, in all battles, they didn't just abandon the camp, because there were elders and there were children and disabled people, and they were coming back to check on them to see how their progress was. And luckily, they were safe, because what had happened at places like the Battle of the Washita earlier in the south, Custer had overrun villages and was known to go in, on the women and children. And that's what they knew about that, and they feared that. So there are some other things in here to mention, but since I have this, I'm going to talk about after the battle was over, or winding down. Of course, the soldiers up here are all deceased, and our family went over on this side here. There's a place here today called Gary Owen, and one of the Cheyenne at our conference, he said he still doesn't like that song, Gary Owen, because that's the one that Custer always played on the attack, and they even remembered it from the Battle of the Washita in the south. So anyway, our group leaves from here, and this is about, again, it's around that 1,000 number, 800 to 1,000, and the destination is down to the Bighorns. There's a I-90 is right over here, going to Billings, and then going south is Lodge Grass community. It's less than 20 miles. That's a pro town there. So they got down to Lodge Grass. That's the first night was there. It was about 100 degrees on that Sunday of the battle, and they never even put up their teepees. It was so hot, they just kind of collapsed out in that open meadow. And you drive by that today, it's a real green meadow, and it's the Lodge Grass exit on that side. And there's a big open meadow, and that's where they camped. But before they got down there, there's also a railroad track runs there today, and that's because over here becomes the Bighorn River. There's the Little Bighorn, and then the Bighorn. They're following that down into where Dayton, Wyoming is. That's right on the Tongue River again, back to the camps. But when they get back to this place here, this area, a lot of there's a drawing that I liked in the visitor center. It's a big mural, and it's half as long as this wall, and it's the aftermath. The soldiers are all laying there, and our men are, the younger ones especially, are dressing up in soldier clothes. They're like playing soldier, and in that drawing it shows some of them are putting their pants on, their trousers, and they're trying it on, and trying this hat on. So part of our group was actually playing soldier almost. They were in a column of like two. So they got down about this far, and probably some of the head warriors are probably laughing at them. We're not going to go that far. But anyway, they came under attack. And who is this? It's people here who never made it out with Reno's much. They're still in these thick woods, the only woods there along here. And they start waving. They were shooting in the air for attention. They said, "Hey, over here, help, help." And they think it's Terry and those guys coming in to rescue them from Fort Ellis. See, they were coming down. And because they're all soldiers, these people look like soldiers, it's one of us. But not. Our people start, firing in there, and they hushed up. They went back to their hiding holes. But anyway, when the battle was over, it was over. A lot of soldiers didn't understand that. Why didn't they stay longer and kill everybody? That's common in place. When they were done, they were done. There was a time to finish and be done, go back. So they travel on down here. The first night they spend, that's That's about, I'd say about 16 miles, not too far down to Lodge Grass. And there they had some ceremonies, and there was a lot of grief also. Some of our people were buried there, right there at Lodge Grass. There's some rocks and caves and things like that. And later there were some caves that were discovered. Now they're white man ranches. And I was over at this one. There's a hillside like, it looks kind of like a cave back in there. And their children were playing up in there from the ranch. And they started uncovering artifacts. They uncovered stuff, soldier buttons, 7th Cavalry items from the battle. So that's right on our route. So that's one way to piece this route on down into like where Wyola is, and you find artifacts along the way. One thing that's really sorry is that there were also skulls that came out of those caves, and of course those kids are fooling around with that stuff. And then a rancher mentioned this, how distasteful it was. He said the generation before had put these on fence posts. They decorated their pasture, and they used it for target practice. So whatever was left was just, shattered around their whole fencing area there. So I do have some pictures in here of those artifacts, soldier items, and there was also a ferrule. It's the piece on the flag, those guidons. Come back maybe to some of these. This is where some of them were burials, and so in my research I don't point out where these places are, but this is that open meadow. The Interstate 90 runs right by here. That was the first night's camp, and then there are some artifacts right here. These are all from soldiers. They actually know whose pocket watch this was, the soldiers. And then these are soldier buttons, and the ferrule or whatever. That's what the flag is held in, and that was broke off. So at that point, they went on a hump and then went on into the tongue of their homeland at Dayton and Manchester area right there. And that's when Crazy Horse left. And they never seen him again until that fall, right before the Battle of Slim Buttes. And this isn't the Pine Ridge Slim Buttes, this is Slim Buttes up by Buffalo, South Dakota. And that was where Anson Mills and Crook came in on the attack there. Some call it the American Horse Village, but it was Iron Plume Village. But anyway, that's the next time they seen each other. They departed there, and they took that flag also. And so then at Slim Buttes, you might have seen these pictures of a starvation march, they called it, and soldiers had to eat their mules, and they destroyed the Indian food and winter's supply, and almost starved themselves. But that's where the 7th Cavalry banner was found, up there in Harding County, there in Slim Buttes. Outside the lodge, they said, of American Horse, it was flying. And then that flag, I always wanted to see that flag. It's in a museum, but sometimes they put them in storage. But I wanted to see if it was broke, that it fits this piece, because it was over there. And there were other things. There was a lot in that Slim Buttes village. There were these big gauntlet gloves that were beaded, and that was GK on there was keel or MK, Miles Keel's gloves. He was a head man, had a captain like, and some of the fiercest fighting also took place where he was at, and that was right next to Calhoun Hill, and they had these higher powered rifles too in that area. Archaeologists later called it Henryville because all the shell casings were from these big Henry rifles. And so another thing that's interesting is how they named these places. Like, as a historian, I almost had to go and research every superintendent, whoever was at the Little Bighorn, you know, the non-Indian, because there's like Lucy Ridge and all these names are none of our names, but you know, Calhoun and Reno Hill, and they have names for these, and none of them are with us, you know. We were fortunate to get the name change. I remember when that happened, from Custer Battlefield to Little Bighorn National Monument, and then we got the Indian Memorial at that time also. And this was me speaking here at the 125th, so 25 years ago. Don't seem that long. And here's the last stand hill. Remember, Joe Medicine Crow was speaking there too, from the Crow, and he had his full regalia headdress, and they took him to Washington and did all kinds of things to him. My guys were saying, hey, they should have took you over there. Maybe they wouldn't give you a feather or something. And this is looking down on the Little Bighorn River. Kate Bighead here said she was bathing when the attack came, and so she had some real extensive stories along the way. She would move, you know, still in safety, but up to areas. So it's really like whoever was there at certain places has a story to tell from there. They even observed, she observed some of the people and others too. You remember there was those brave boys, I call them, and because of our wellness and healing today, I don't like to use the non-Indian word for taking one's life, because we have a lot of, you know, problems in that area, but for a lot of groups it was honorable to sacrifice your life, and there was a big ceremony for these boys. They knew they were going to do this, and it was right down in here, and so she watched that parade. And they have the names of all those, and so when they turned them loose at the same time of the Calhoun Hill split, they were a part of that. So they perished and they didn't last long. That's another big part of the story to honor those people here. Anybody know Gay Kingman? He's been to some of my, this is Gay right here. At the 125th, they recognized some of their dog with horns, I think it was, from her family, and they put markers up for the first time. Some other pictures here. This is the 1926 reunion here. Red Cloud was not in the battle. Standing Bear also was pretty well known right here. This is Stephen Standing Bear, and he did some of the murals of the battle, and I believe his great grandson, great would be Mr. Amia. All I can think of is Lowell Amia, because he was at Black Hill State, but Arthur Amia. So yeah, a lot of these names well known at the battle. And then, of course, we were talking earlier about Dewey Beard, Iron Tail, and those people. The photographs were taken in 1948. We mentioned Bill Brophy, who was down in the Gap here, studio, took those pictures. I used to visit with him quite a bit. Anybody know Bob Lee is a historian, writer for the Rapid City Journal, and he actually had a pipe that was given to him by Dewey Beard. And there's a picture of it, and I think that pipe is right now at by the visitor center at the Crazy Horse Memorial. Anyway, he had no proof other than he said, well, I know Dewey gave it to me, but he didn't have no proof picture. He had pictures of him and Dewey, and lo and behold, I dug in my stuff, and here I seen this picture, and right away I recognized the pipe, and it was Dewey with that pipe. So they have that picture up there, so it proves that happened. These are Hunkpapas who were there. Hunkpapas, they've been cooking. City Blow, Rain in the Face, Bear, Dog, Black Moon, Mini Koju, Oglala, Big Road, Ikpaduda. I have a Ikpaduda section in Santee. He was ostracized from his tribe. He's really a ferocious warrior, and this was after, bitter with the Minnesota conflict, and the hangings had taken place, 62, and he was drawing too much heat, and so they kind of like ostracized him from the village. What does he do? He shows up at our warrior camps at Little Bighorn. There's Inkpaduta. He's ready. It's the kind of entertainment he likes. So anyway, I have a little bit on him. He went to Canada with the rest of them, and lived up there for a while. There's a book on him too. And Lane Whiteman, I told you that Hump's brother accidentally killed him. Brave Bear, Tumu, Crazy Head, Sam's Art, the Itazepcho. Just on this last Battle of the Rosebud, they're recognizing all these tribes, and they didn't. They forgot Cheyenne Rivers group. I said, well, a lot of the world does not know 4 of the 7 Lakota bands are in Cheyenne River. They say Cheyenne River. Mini Koju, Itazepcho, Uhueanupa, and Sihasapa, Blackfoot, and not the Canada Blackfoot or Blackfeet. So anyway, the Sam's Art was from the story without their bow, without the bows one time, and so the sands is without, and the arc is the bow for the French. Brûlé, Sichongo, Earth Thigh, Uhueanupa, Tukettle. This is Curly, Crow Scout. All these crows told a lot about the battle. White man runs them. I like those names. So yeah, they still tell a lot of the story up there. I know we had a Little Bighorn planning meeting, and Bighorn partners were part of that, the superintendent. And as the early planning this spring, they already had all the crows in place, on the speakers, and they're gonna welcome us into their battlefield. And so some of our elders were kind of upset. At the park there, they said, "Where's the some of the these are the guidance here." There were, as I said, a few of those There were some that were, they called unfurled, that were in the saddlebags that were found with some of the pack trains and all that. This is Custer here. This was his message that they have preserved to Benteen. Come on, the big village, be quick, bring packs. P.S. Bring packs. Cook took that to Benteen, who's way in the south there. And this is Cook here, the author here. And Wooden Leg, he's Cheyenne. He has a lot of interesting accounts too of being in the battle. And he said, on that day I got a very unusual scalp. And what he got on his belt was one of this guy's sideburns. That's what he had. And this is Moving Road Woman here, who told, I said, seen the headmen on the top of the hills circling. She became known as Mary Crawler lately. Later, I interviewed people from her family. She ended up working for Ed Lemon up in Lemon, South Dakota. Lemon is named for that. Went on into Hunkpapa movie robe. I know a family that has her saddle that she used in the battle. Among our family, we have the saddle of Iron Lightning, which was returned not that long ago. Iron Lightning was in the battle, a relative of Humps. This is Comanche, Miles Keogh with the gloves, the gauntlets. This is the horse, survived, the only, they always say this was Custer's horse, but it was Miles Keogh, and they were going to put it down, but instead they nursed it back to health. It went to Fort Meade, and there was a proclamation where this horse would never be rode again, and it was wined and dined and had caviar, and it finally lived to, I think, 29 years old. And it's stuffed down in Kansas right now. University of Kansas, I think it is, by Lawrence. And they said there was a tradition at the school museum there that when you, a test is coming up and you go by Comanche and then you do a little pinch of his hair as good luck for that test. So he got to looking pretty bald after a while. So, but yeah, Moving Road Woman. Women had a big role there and fought in the battle. A lot of the boys helped out too. A lot of them would stay at safe distances to be water boys. And some of those events too, right up the trail here from, I mentioned Sand Creek. That was 1854, but then right after that, the next big thing was, well, Spotted Tail brought a war pipe to the people in the western Nebraska, some Sichangu and Oglala and that. And then what happened was, this was a time period when he was sent to prison, and he went down south and came back a changed man. You know, he was more agreeable to sending his kids to Carlisle, which he had opposed earlier. But the other war pipe came to our people up at Dayton, and we accepted that because we're all married into Cheyenne. And the first engagement after that was over here at Julesburg, Colorado, and Julesburg battles. And then the next one was Platte Bridge fight on the Bozeman Trail. That's right there at Casper. So you can Google Battle of Red Buttes. That's only a couple years old on YouTube. We won a Western Spur Award for that. But our men journeyed down from there. They were at the hole in the wall area where the KC Wyoming is, and the Dull Knife fight took place back in there, and of course Butch Cassidy's son Skip later. But anyway, they made that trek down south, right where the interstate is, and that's where Casper Collins was killed in that battle. That Casper is named for the city. And one really good source on that is some of the soldiers, actually. George Bent's son was married into the Cheyenne, and he was over there by KC, and he said he estimated about 1,000 men, warriors, and he knew a lot of our people, Cheyenne and Minnetonka, and so those are pieces that you pick up, along with winter count history is really good too. This was White Bull over there, and so I'd like to hear any other stories if people have some stories they'd like to share about this. This was another one here. When I was a little kid, I grew up in a poo hall on our res. It was from our back door. I could be in the back door of this poo hall in 4 minutes, under 4 minutes. Anyway, shot pool in there. One of these big murals of Budweiser, last stand, Custer's always the last one down, and maybe a lot of heirs. But then I come across this old one here, and the author actually interviewed people at Standing Rock, and these are actually people from descriptions. He got descriptions of some of our warriors, and then some are likenesses of soldiers. So they're really actual people. It's not the mythology type thing. So right here, this is Hump right here. So he interviewed them, and this here, although probably not dressed right, because Crazy Horse usually wore 1 or 2 red-tailed hawk pictures, but this is Crazy Horse right there. Where the headdress?
Yeah, you're rolling it?
It's right here.
Oh, right there.
And then over here is people like Rain in the Face, Crow King, Gall. But yeah, he actually did do some work on this. But he probably, like Crazy Horse, he probably put on a headdress to make it look better. And this is the code here. It's got numbered, and I know you can't read this here, but some of the people he drew was Custer, Rain in the Face, Gall, Spotted Eagle, Two Moon, White Bull, and White Bull, he was a very prolific writer. Remember he said, he said, I killed Custer, I did it. And he changed his story a few times, lost some credibility with that, but he lived right next door to Hump at Cherokee, and we became related to him later. They're the nephews of City Bull. One Bull and White Bull were nephews of City Bull, and then later we married into White Bull. But some of them said, well, since one of his first war parties was under Hump, why would he say so little about him in his books? Well, you go home and you have to go back, and there's a protocol thing in the Indian world where you're not telling the head man story. So he was very careful about what he said. But as far as himself, he wrote a lot of stuff. Really valuable information, but you have to sort a lot of his stuff out. So Yeah, the Victory Day, as I said, there's so many people that seen this from a different standpoint, from a different point on the battlefield, and you get if you've never been there, it's about 4 miles from Last Stand Hill down to Reno, and it's a day area there. And some of the tribes are saying, yeah, we'll be over here, we're gonna meet up. And I know from being at the 125th, you better have an exact meeting spot where you're not gonna see each other. There's gonna be lots and lots of people there, and lots of everything, lots of horses, maybe up to approaching 1,000 horses, and riders coming in from all directions, honoring for youth. There were some ceremonies that took place back in the day for youth, and they're also going to have those redone. And, so I'm giving a presentation on the 25th, right around noon, for the national parks, and my tribe and one other asked me to do that, to have a slot on their agenda, so they'd seen there was a crow and a Lakota in there too, I guess. And then I'm also speaking at the 200 acres, and that's through a former chairman. I'm not sure if that's open to the public or not, but on the south end, Reno Creek, that land that runs this way, and Custer came in, and Reno on the other side, and he sent Reno in to make the attack right there. And then on this property also, there's a place called the Lone Teepee. So as part of the history of the Little Bighorn Museum, you get a story on the Lone Teepee. So what was the Lone Teepee? That's before the battle, and it's kind of like the crackers that were found, and anyway, it's a Lone Teepee sitting out there, and it was an Etazacho lodge of She-Bear was the family, and they had lost people at the Rosebud battle, and they were having a service in like that. It was basically like a funeral, and the Crow Scouts came in, seen a teepee, and they're eager, and they burned it, and the reports were that the Sioux were chased out of the lodge, but they don't tell you what was going on and the whole story with that. So that's part of that. And then I know the landowners to the next of our property are the Perdion Tops, is a well-known Crow name. I know some of their family, and they have a drawing thing it's collapsed now off the wall. But we said it was not crazy horses, but a lot of people attributed to him that after the battle, he drew this in like a petroglyph in the rock, and it's a horse rider, and there's a snake up above him. And we said that was Shoshone drew that, snakes we call them. But anyway, that's some of the stuff.
Do you have pictures of the entryway into where the battlefield itself? Do you have any pictures of the walls or the entryway in?
To the visitor center?
I don't know, I'm not sure. Well, we're like the different names of different people that were contributed to the name change and all that stuff.
Oh, that's all in
Where
the
is that?
memorial.
So that's not anywhere near
The memorial is next to Last Stand Hill, and it's open air, and all of their names are in there of warriors. And then that's where I said Colleen Cutshaw won that contest for the wrought iron design. That was in here too.
Well, because I think my dad's name is somewhere on those walls.
What's his name?
Enos Porter.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
He's one of the people instrumental in
And
that.
getting the name changed.
Yeah.
He was.
I have never, so my younger brother Enos Jr. used to go every year up there to try to like carry on what my dad did or whatever, but I have never been there.
Yeah.
I would really like to go.
Enos, I had worked with him before, and that, right, here's the last stand hill, and that memorial is right over to the left here.
Do you have to go enter through there to get to the,
No, you just walk in there, there's a walking trail.
you don't have like no pictures of that or anything, do you?
Just, no, not in here, I don't. But there is a picture, oh yeah, I do, of the Colleen's drawing.
Donovan,
Yeah,
I have a question about the warriors that went into battle with Crazy Horse. And, I've heard that some of the warriors that he rode into battle with were his Minikoju or Itazucho uncles. Can you tell us something about that? His mother's sisters or brothers or uncles or nephews?
Yeah, it came in pretty quick, you know, they had to get horses right away, and I know, they had some problems with the horses acting up. Let's see. Yeah, but Hump and Crazy Horse went down to that south end, and kind of like missed the Reno fight. And I know in Hump's story, he had a wild horse that he couldn't control, and it was basically bucking, and they were trying to get another horse for him. And his brother Iron Thunder also the same way. And the horses were about from here up to about where 5th Street is. And there was a huge herd of horses. That's how far the boys had to go to get more horses in. So they were bringing them in that great herd. That's what the Crow Scouts, when they were at the crow's nest, way southeast of the battle, they said, there's the camp. And none of the soldiers could see anything, but what they were seeing was this big cloud of dust from the horses over there. So, yeah, I do know that they both left at that time for up to the Calhoun, and they always knew where each other generally was, even though there is a lot of mass, I don't say confusion, but there was always organization as to where the family people were in proximity. Yeah, they ended up at the last stand hill, and then the trek to the south was together. Later, Crazy Horse, after they split up, he went through a place called Sioux Pass, that's still named Sioux Pass today, and went east. And he spent quite a few weeks in the Powder River country. And then, as I said, the next time they met up was at Slim Buttes. They never got in on the Slim Buttes battle that fall. The people who were in it told us so. They said, we're gonna go get Crazy Horse, you know, he's over here. But he was about a day's ride. And by the time they got in there, that was over, that battle was over. Yes?
You know, there are many mistranslations from Lakota to English, and one is Tashunka, the proper translation is his horse is wild. His horse is wild, and here now a crazy horse. Yeah, Tashunka his horse is wild.
Yeah.
And there are many, many mistranslations. The other one is the wrong soldier. Who has seen a wrong soldier? The proper translation would be tall soldier. I think it's a Haska.
Thank you. This is the Indian Memorial right here, what Enos was a part of. And this circular area here, it's in the round with an open air. And then the sides are all like, I guess kind of like marble,
Yeah, that's what it is.
engraved, all their names in there. And then, as I said, Colleen Cutshaw, Papa, she's an artist, won the national contest for this. So, you know, this is, I don't know, the size, you know, a person stands here, they'd be up, you know.
Is that freestanding or what is that like?
It's just like a wrought iron.
Wrought
stands
iron?
there.
Oh.
Yeah, wrought iron, it stands there all the time. So right over here is Highway 212. Right there, going along. And it's right next to the last stand hill.
How far is it from here to there? To get from here to there?
About 4.5 hours. I go Sheridan last 5 years, I never missed a weekend from Rapid back and forth, 3.5 hours, it's about an hour on here, from there.
So if a person wants to try to go, there's probably be really hard to find somewhere to stay, huh?
Yeah, a lot of people are doing this observation a week before or a week after. I usually give a presentation at the Journey on this, and they move that late July. It's always done on the 25th every year. 25th. And that Little Bighorn Associates is at the Ramada Hotel in Sheridan, and that'll start Wednesday. So I'll be
They
set
say
up
they
there.
expect like 10,000 people, is that true?
Gee, I don't know.
I've seen that somewhere, and then it's
Yeah.
like over 1,000
Yeah,
horse riders,
yeah,
the horses and the riders.
yeah.
I know
So
there are
the
10,000
conference, they have historians all through that, the 3 days, and then bus trips into the Rosebud, into Little Bighorn, back to the conference, and then on the Saturday, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, I speak for them, and then I'm out of there to Crazy Horse Memorial.
So who owns the land that the reenactment's done on? Like where they
Real
actually-
Bird.
No.
Real Bird family.
So that's a Crow tribe?
Yeah,
Or Crow,
yeah.
people know them?
Yeah, they have a grandstand there, it's right by Little Bighorn River, and they do reenactments every year. And so if any of you wanna do reenactment and ride horses, show off a little bit. The city of Hardin does one too. Theirs is a little more touristy, you know.
Oh,
I think Lewis and Clark coming through.
do you try to make a lot of money?
Gold mine, gold pans and stuff.
have
I got one story to tell. I went up there one year. I used to do tour buses, so I was on a tour bus. And would always take people to that. I could see, that's kind of different there. But anyway, I was up there with my grandson, and we were getting ready to leave. And Dad, and I told him, I said, no, it's all over. They're all trying to get down there to get Custer's autograph, the person who was playing Custer. And I said, no, stay back, because these are all tourists and somebody's gonna get hurt. And the next thing that happened, this big crowd and soldiers and their horses, and the soldier got off. And here they put a child, like about 2-year-old child, up on the saddle to get a picture. And right then that horse just bolted. And she screamed, oh my God, my child. And it went, about, 25 yards, and the child rolled like a ball, and the horse looked like it just run right over the top of it. And
It's about like them petting the
no, it
buffalo.
wasn't hurt at all.
Don't pet the buffalo.
So another thing too, I would say as a word of warning, I don't wanna scare people, but last fall at the Rosebud, where I'm going tomorrow, we were there when archaeologists were working. Stephen Fox, who did the work when the fire was there, they're trying to find, I think it was about 10 bodies of the soldiers who are never found at the Rose, but anyway, they're out there doing their infrared stuff. But anyway, they took a picture of a bear that, the day before I was there, they had a picture of a brown bear walked out of the thicket. And I always walked through, he just walked by, mind his own business. And then online, I seen a picture of said a grizzly bear on the Little Bighorn battlefield. Now, I don't know if that was true or not. Anyway,
On the agenda, is there like,
be alert.
is there gonna be a discussion about the medals?
Those
I don't know if
medals,
that's a place for it or.
I don't think so. It might be even like the Wounded Knee are more controversial.
Yeah,
Because the only medals were for those that, Reno was dying of thirst up there. They had to get water or die. So they went down into heavy fire with the water, and some brought water, and the ones on top, maybe that wind off diving, they covered them. So those 6 got. So anyway, I want to thank you for coming out, and any other questions?
I have a little story. During that time, there was a bounty on Pigeon Scouts, and there were a couple of bounty hunters that were out that way, and they were camping at the bottom of the hill. And they woke up in the morning, one of them, they were young, 2 of my bounty hunters. One of them woke up in the morning, and we lived were there, all, they were warriors, all they wanted up to the hill, down on it. And so, the guy who woke up his partner and said, we're gonna be rich.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of money.
yeah, that's where my dad's from, yeah.
Soldiers that get paid.
So, there's another one. So